It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Hello everyone and welcome to the EdTech Mondays Nigeria show. My name is Chinyelu Akpa, your host on the show, and it's good to have you here again. Thank you to all our listeners for tuning back in, and if you're a first-time listener here, we're sure you'll have a good time listening in today. Last week, we began the conversation on the topic Accelerating EdTech Financing for Equity and Access. This week, we'll be continuing the conversation on the crucial role technology plays and the role finance plays as well in driving innovation and accessibility in education through EdTech. Joining me on the show this week to share another interesting insight on this topic is Oscar Obiora Udebwana. Is the CEO and co-founder of EduPoint, an innovative online platform that connects learners to well-vetted and trusted professionals anywhere and anytime. So far, they have taught over 35,000 learners from over 160 public and private schools in 5 countries and across 3 continents. He is a recipient of the Outstanding Social Innovator Award in 2021 and a 2020 winner of the EdTech All-Stars Award, endorsed by the Federal Ministry of Education, Nigeria. With his initiative, EduPoint also awarded the Home Tutoring Solution of the Year, among other recognitions. Because of our time, I'll stop here. He has so many accolades. It's an honor to have you here, Oscar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. So let's dive right in.
Okay.
How do you see technology transforming education? And what role does EdTech financing play in accessing this transformation? I'm asking this because, obviously, you have a tech-based solution that is matching learners to learning content and people who are able to provide this service anywhere across, the country. You have 5 countries, but I know you're spreading really swiftly. So what do you see?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So actually, it would be good for us to appreciate the history of EdTech financing in Nigeria. Last 10 years, you could see that more of the financing were non-EdTech. But we begin to see both government, FDIs put money into EdTech. And that's because they begin to realize the importance of education in society.
Yes.
Just recently, the budget was passed. For the first time, it was 7.5%, which is almost the 3rd most monetized budget in this economy, right? And now we begin to see some, investors now trying to sort of put their money where their mouth is in education. For example, we could see the likes of MasterCard, impact investors coming in to say, how do we amplify the importance of financing EdTech? And if you look at the importance of financing EdTech, then you look at how the ripple effect it will generate. Often why we begin to put all our hopes on government. Government is just to put the infrastructure in place. However, private investment helps to amplify the reach of the accessibility of education across various cadres. So what financing we do in EdTech is that it's going to make quality education very accessible, affordable, not just meant for the rich now, but even the common man can have access to that quality education. The next is R&D. We begin to see a lot of startups delve into research development of how they can improve the learning outcomes of students. How can we also improve teachers' training? You can't take away teachers' training out of the context. All of those things are funded by funds. And that's why, MasterCard, with partnership with CC Hub, is doing a great job in carrying out those accelerator programs such that they know the ripple effect. If they invest in these startups that are doing well in education, they know the multiplying effect it will have in the educational system. But again, we can't take away the impact of private-public partnership. So we are hoping to see that if government play their role, if schools play their role, if startups in EdTech like myself play our role, and definitely if foreign investors play their role, there's going to be a very, very good shift in how education is being assessed, even by the last end.
Okay, so I like what you said, and it is something we've said so many times on this show. People are always quick to say the government has to provide everything. But you have rightly said that the government is in charge of providing the infrastructure. How well would you say we are doing with those infrastructure development? For instance, internet connectivity. For any EdTech business, any edtech products you're trying to put out, one thing, you will have to think about is how heavy is this product? Can I stream it in Lagos? Can I stream it in Jigawa? Can I stream it in Katangura or Zango Kataf? Right? So how well are we doing in ensuring that the basis, which are the building blocks for anything you want to do, are available, and providing an enabling environment for players like you and the FDIs to come in and have a viable ground for growth?
I think firstly, we also have to appreciate our present government, specifically the likes of Mr. Tijani Boso, because one of his core responsibilities to see how he connects people across various networks cheaper or even at most free. And you begin to see that a lot of startups are now coming up with innovations that can even promote learning even offline, right? So how do we begin to make education accessible in locations where they have no internet connectivity or low internet connectivity? However, government is still working into, I would say government is still in work in progress in that aspect because it's an ongoing conversation. But for me, as a startup founder, I think the focus will be how can I build something that is scalable, that doesn't need entirely internet to use. So if I begin to do that, definitely it will also help people who have no access to internet. But I think the journey about getting to that point is on course, because if you have the Minister of ICT involved heavily in making or democratizing internet accessibility. If you have a lot of startups who are now plugging into several already existing platforms, and if you have startups who are also building solutions that does not need internet connectivity, definitely we'll begin to see that we are heading somewhere compared to where we are in the last 30 years.
So we are doing...
I think we're doing well because we have intentional government. I think
we are doing well. Thank you, Oscar. And this leads me to our next question. Okay. You mentioned the part of, trying to design online and offline models.
Exactly.
So how do we ensure that in our design, we are actually working to provide access to learners across underserved communities? Because most times when people are building, edtech, they tend to forget that you have people who might not have very great internet access or even can't afford no matter how little the cost of connectivity is, they might have problems, even being able to subscribe. So how do we ensure that we get everyone on board? We are not disenfranchising people, but also not skimming down on ensuring that we are sticking to the learning curriculums, not shortchanging anybody else because you're in an underserved community.
So again, statistics by UNESCO says Africa needs at least 16.3 million teachers, which our current system cannot provide yet. That's one problem. The second problem is that there are numerous curriculums that they are not centralized in such a way that you have different people using different curriculums at different times. So somebody said, my child goes to British curriculum. Somebody said, my child goes to American curriculum, right? So you begin to now start segregating the quality of education, and that now translate to the cost of that education. So if it's British, definitely to be very expensive. But in terms of how do we build something that could be achievable, everyone can use. Yes. I think there's a need to now use a multidimensional stakeholder approach. So the first is the schools. The second is the government. The third is the parent. And of course, the fourth is we that play in that middleman space. So if there is a cooperation, not competition, because that's a new form of competition now. So I believe in the ethos of collaboration and cooperation. If we come together and nest our curricula, if we come together and help ourselves, definitely you begin to realize that places where they don't have access to these materials, they can. I'll give, for example, an instance. In 2021, we had a partnership with Lagos State Government on EcoDigital. We are one of the 6 startups that trained about 30,000 learners on how to use digital skills. Now, that couldn't be achievable if there was no stakeholder agreement with the government, right? So the government came on board. The government was paying for the student who couldn't pay for themselves. But you know that if the parent didn't allow the children to go to school, the kids wouldn't get the knowledge. So the parents also were involved in that conversation. However, we're like the middleman that did the implementation program. So if there is this harmony between all the players in education, if we are not seeing ourselves as competition, because you can't take away the importance of education in society. And what we've seen in the other side of the mirror is that we are even competing and we're not collaborating. And we are even competing with one of the most important sectors of the economy. So if we begin to come together and share curricula, share knowledge, share training, share resources, share funding, in that case, the end goal is to improve our educational institution, right? To improve our students, to also help our learners in their learning expectation. So I think the reason why our solutions are not penetrating as much as it could do is the fact that there are roadblocks. Say, for example, EduPoint, for example, we work with schools. We teach them STEM classes. Now, if private schools are not onboarding me, I can teach more students, right? And if grants are not funding me, I can't develop resources. So everybody is a multi-dimensional stakeholder approach. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I don't think it's a one-man show. I think the moment to begin to realize that it's a collective approach, however, individual expectations, I think we'll get there.
Thank you very much, Oscar, for that well-detailed response and, highlighting the role everyone plays, in ensuring that access is not just a buzzword, but a reality.
Yeah.
My next question now would be on the financing bit. You have quite a pedigree in being able to attract partnerships and financing deals. What has given you that edge or has opened you up to some of the opportunities and funding opportunities you have gotten?
Oh, all right, thank you. So basically, the reality in the EdTech space, the fact that it's one of the most poorly funded sector.
True.
I'll tell you the reason for it. So the reason is that it involves patient capital. So it means that the investor has to be very patient. There's usually delay in sales. So ideally, you want to sell cash and buy, normal market product. But in EdTech, ideally, your turnaround time of sales is maybe a month. If a parent pay for lesson, exactly, parent pay for lesson, maybe a month. A parent pay for his school fees, maybe a term. And if it's university, maybe a session, maybe a semester, or probably a session. So investors look at it and say, oh, wow, the turnaround time of this is very poor. So I want to put my money where my mouth is so that I get my money back quickly and invest into other businesses. So we cannot underplay the fact that the edutech sector is poorly funded. But we begin to see a new wave. And like I said earlier, that investors are beginning to think and said, in addition to just being profitable, how can I create impact in the economy I find myself? And that's why we're saying the likes of MasterCard, CC Hub, and the rest coming together to say, okay, how do we accelerate these startups? For me as a business, as a company, we are profitable, but we have a high social impact. How we're able to raise money is one, traction. Investor wouldn't invest in your company if you don't have traction. So when we first started, I remember when we first started, pitching was difficult because the B2C channel of where we operate is quite difficult to scale. I mean, home lesson, you need like 1 million homes to make a million naira, right? So, but we had to drift from that. We pivoted from that to B2B.
Okay.
Working with schools.
Yeah.
And when we started working with schools, government saw our capability and capacity of saying, if you could teach private schools STEM, we could deploy to teach our government school students STEM also. So basically, I think we've not really raised funding like that in terms of private equity, right?
Yeah.
That's because of the slow, challenge that we face in that space. However, we've raised grants.
Yes.
We've gotten grant from some supporting partners. We've also raised funding from such as impact investment from impact investors. Yeah. But we now start seeing PE already, VCs, saying that there's actually something here, because if you say more than 50 million Nigerians have no access to quality education, where people are seeing problems, the investor has seen opportunities.
Definitely,
right?
We can't be building schools everywhere, and
exactly.
That's where EdTech comes in.
Exactly, and now democratizing that education, making it even accessible to other countries that have similar problems, that's a game changer. So, of course, definitely, we know in the future we'll raise funding. Definitely, we are there yet. However, in the last few years, we've been able to raise grants and win competitions. Those are like our bootstrapping method of raising funding to sort of accelerate the work we do at EduPoint.
Thank you. So one thing that has struck me in everything you've said so far is you understood the climate you were working in. You realized if you're going to work solely with homes, households, it take you a longer time to climb up that hill. But knowing when to pivot and saying, let's begin to work with schools, is giving you better numbers, which now makes you attractive for support. And finally, what role do government policies play in opening up our EdTech ecosystem to financing, to have more FDIs who think what we have on the continent or what we have in Nigeria is good enough and they can invest their money?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think the government of today is really, really thinking about that because of the intentional steps they are making. I'll give you a typical statistic. So, as a program done by Mr. Bosu Tijani called the 3MTT program.
3MTT.
3 million technical trainers, right?
Yes.
The goal is to see how we can export this tech talent or even use them, localize them for the good of the country. Now, government are taking strategic steps in that direction. However, the investors out there are also looking at the economic climate of the country to see if government put in their XYZ investment here, that means I can put my investment there. So government could come up with better policies, regulations. Now, this is one of those things that can help transform the ecosystem, right? Make it a bit more easy to play with, make it a bit more accessible, make it a bit more palatable, giving some EdTech startup that level of comfort to say, we support you, we are with you, and begin to drag or begin to attract some form of impact investors and even venture capitalists to come and also fund that initiative. Another thing we're seeing again is the fact that if government is able to increase ICT or technological penetration, it means invariably, right, the use or the access to education will be democratized.
Yes.
That means that I cannot learn even from the comfort of my home. Again, if government is able to set structures in place, you need to go to some locations. We're in Lagos, but if you travel around, you realize that Lagos is actually enjoying. And if we begin to see some ripple effect of what Lagos is doing over there, the replica effect of what Lagos has over there, so that can also help to improve access to quality education. And so I think, apart from too much focus on government, we, as players in the edutech space, could also come up with private-public partnerships. So government can create room for a meritable in quote, private-public partnerships, such that government is intentional, and then when they are making policies or regulations, they bring us to the table to discuss. And that roundtable discussion they hear our pain, and help them to design a user framework that can both work for the
them,
users
yes,
and also for them.
yes.
Because the government of the day will be interested in the impact, but we are more interested in the usability of what we are producing.
Yes.
So I think with that, all of those things can help, grow the impact that government has and the role that government has to play in the educational space.
So I've heard you from everything you've said. Very, very important. If we want to get more people, FDIs or private organizations to fund EdTech, we need to see the government taking steps in that direction.
Exactly.
Boosting their confidence. If they think this place is good enough to invest in, the government now seeing it good enough to invest in, then it gets the assurance and the confidence of the external stakeholders and the bit of the co-creation where everybody comes to the table to agree on, to identify what the challenges are and co-design what the policies and the strategies for implementing the policies could be, and just stipulate what would success rates for this policy mean. It would be better for everyone and would see us being more attractive to FDIs and other stakeholders who want to invest in EdTech. It has been a wonderful time talking to you, Oscar. I almost do not want to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for such wonderful responses and insights to the world of EdTech.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
And to you, our listeners, would love to hear from you. What role do you think the government plays in financing EdTech, and providing infrastructure to improve EdTech in Nigeria. We would love to hear from you. Send us a message on WhatsApp on 0703 165 0809. You could also join our Telegram community on EdTech Mondays Nigeria to join the community and share your feedback. It's been another amazing time on the EdTech Mondays Nigeria show. I remain your host, Chinyelu Akpa, and I'll be with you same time, same station next week. Till then, it's bye for now.
EdTech Monday is proudly brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.